In the beginning. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Everything he made was ordered, intentional, and good. God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. Genesis 1:31. In this original design, God was the source of all truth. He defined what is right, what is beneficial, what is good. What is good and evil, according to God? According to God, good is what brings life, order, blessing, and righteousness. Evil is what brings harm, disorder, destruction, and rebellion. Good is not based on feelings or gain. Good is what aligns with the Creator's design. Evil is not simply failure. It is anything that corrupts, twists, or opposes what God made. God gave Adam authority over creation, but not the authority to define morality. That boundary remained God's alone. Adam and Eve. In Genesis 2:17, God gave a clear command. You must not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, for when you eat of it, you will surely die. But in Genesis 3, Eve listened to the serpent. When the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food, pleasing to the eye, and desirable for gaining wisdom, she took and ate. Genesis 3:6. This was the turning point. She and Adam no longer trusted God's judgment. They chose based on what seemed good to them. That's when humanity stepped into God's role. They began to decide for themselves what is right and wrong, not by truth, but by desire. And what humans call good is often just what benefits themselves, even if it hurts others. That is how evil entered the world, by replacing God's standard with selfish judgment. Human goodness is selfish. From that point on, the definition of good was corrupted. Instead of asking, is this right in God's eyes? People asked, is this good for me? This shift redefined morality around self-interest. It became normal to pursue things that benefit us, even if they damage others. This is why injustice exists. This is why inequality and oppression appear. People will call their actions good because they profit, they rise, they gain, but in truth they are stepping on others to do it. This is the root of the division between rich and poor, master and servant, ruler and ruled. Humanity's idea of good produces hierarchies, exploitation, and control, not justice. From Cain to Babel. The next generation continued the pattern. Cain brought an offering to God, but it was not accepted, not because it was crops, but because of his heart. Cain was very angry. Then the Lord said, if you do what is right, will you not be accepted? Genesis 4:5-7. Cain didn't want correction. He wanted worship on his own terms. When rejected, he became violent and murdered his brother Abel. This is how redefined morality leads to destruction. Later, in Genesis 11, people gathered to build a tower. Come, let us build ourselves a city and make a name for ourselves. Genesis chapter 11:4. This was more than architecture. It was a declaration of independence. They wanted to replace God's authority and become gods themselves. They defined their own version of good and evil, rooted in pride, unity without truth, and control without accountability. This desire gave birth to systems where leaders are worshipped, where oppressors justify themselves, and where people are ruled by fear instead of truth. God confused their language and scattered them, not as a punishment, but to stop a rebellion that was growing too quickly. Babylon and the Empires. Later, the Empire of Babylon emerged, and it became the Bible's clearest symbol of global rebellion. Babylon enslaved nations. It burned cities. It demanded worship of kings and idols. Is not this the great Babylon I have built, by my mighty power and for the glory of my majesty? Daniel 4:30. Babylon was proud, brutal, and full of luxury, built on the backs of the weak. It called itself righteous while crushing the innocent. It called its violence order and its idolatry unity. Assyria, Persia, Greece, Rome, they followed the same spirit, redefining good as obedience to the state, redefining evil as anything that resists their rule, using propaganda, idols, wealth, and war to control people. They claimed to be the light of the world while walking in darkness. Even God's people fell into this pattern. Israel, the nation God set apart, also turned away from his standard. In those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. Judges 20:25. They had the law, they had the truth, but they chose independence. They built idols, they ignored justice, they persecuted prophets. They did what was convenient, not what was right. Today the world still runs on the same pattern. Greed is called success. Lust is called freedom. Oppression is called policy. Deception is called strategy. Rebellion is called progress. Pride is called self-worth. Leaders justify lies. Corporations exploit workers. Media normalizes sin. Even some churches twist scripture to avoid discomfort. They call these things good, but underneath it's still feeding greed, lust, power, and fear at the cost of others. Truth is no longer something to obey. It's something to manage. Did God create the punishment? Many think God reacted to Adam and Eve with anger and invented suffering, but the Bible shows a different picture. Because you listened, cursed is the ground. Through painful toil you will eat of it all the days of your life. Genesis 3:17. God didn't create evil. He allowed the natural results of sin to unfold. The ground resisted them. Work became painful. Life became exhausting. Relationships turned to blame and control. Death became reality. These weren't random punishments. They were the direct results of trying to live apart from the one who gives life. God allowed them to experience the full weight of their choice, so they would understand the cost of rebellion. Conclusion. The fruit in Eden was not about appetite. It was about authority. Would mankind trust God's wisdom or redefine truth to serve themselves? Adam and Eve chose independence. They believed they could define good and evil. That choice shaped all of history, from Cain to Babel, from Babylon to today. We now live in a world built on selfish definitions of good, where truth is twisted, justice is bought, and evil is renamed. But even when humanity fell, God did not walk away. In that very moment, he promised a Redeemer. He will crush the serpent's head. Genesis 3:15. There was judgment, but also mercy. There were consequences, but also hope.